the San Francisco 49ers were able to make a little bit of a statement with their Week 1 win, opening up the season against the New York Jets, who are a hopeful team this upcoming season now that they have Aaron Rodgers finally fully healthy. He made it through this full game, but didn't go exactly as planned for the New York Jets as they end up suffering a loss to San Francisco. And I think that, from initially here, from the 49ers perspective, this is a team that had a lot of noise surrounding them during the offseason with the holdouts of Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams, but ultimately they just played this game business as usual, ended up rolling over the Jets. The offense took no real steps back, and they win this game 32-19. And that was even with Christian McCaffrey out for this game, ruled out a couple hours before the game kicked off, and it was Jordan Mason getting his first career start. Interesting subplot there in terms of the timeline, as when the 49ers decided to rule out McCaffrey, Mason had previously said that he knew that he was going to start on Friday, but McCaffrey wasn't ruled out until just before the game. So the 49ers may have some sort of investigation on their hands there, but, or we'll let that be. Takes away from what was an excellent first career start from Jordan Mason, who you have to feel good for. He was very impressive in this game. 28 carries, 147 yards, and a touchdown. You didn't even really notice the absence of Christian McCaffrey from a game planning perspective. Yeah, maybe you got a little bit extra Deebo Samuel taking some carries himself, but Mason was, like I mentioned, very impressive. I thought he did an excellent job of especially weaving through traffic, and just sort of the discipline of a runner was really good to see from him, and it just shows that the 49ers continue to manufacture different skill position players that have impacts on them. But like I mentioned, Mason, 147 yards on the ground. The San Francisco 49ers as a whole, 180 yards on the ground. And that does sort of bring me to my first takeaway, that this was a very disappointing defensive performance from the Jets. Now, they are supposed to be one of the best defenses in the league, and they did hold up pretty well in those first two possessions, forcing a 3-and-out on the first drive, and then the second drive, they were actually backed up on their own side of the field because of the Breece Hall fumble that gave the 49ers a short field, but ultimately the Jets were able to sort of buckle down there and force the 49ers into a field goal. So I do give them credit there. I give them a pass, I suppose, but the 49ers did end up scoring on their final 8 drives of the game, including that field goal. And in large part, it was because of the fact that the Niners were just able to run the ball down the throats of New York, which is something that was not really anticipated. The strength of the Jets' defense is more so in the secondary, I would argue, but I do think that they have a lot of talent in that front seven as well, that they feel like they should be able to rely on a little bit more. And I did think it was a pretty disappointing performance from them as a whole. Now, ultimately, I do sort of look at it as this is something that could be semi-easily fixed, because Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley are two of the top linebackers, especially in the run game in the NFL, in my opinion. And then you actually got, some decent production from some surprises. Clemens was really impressive throughout the game. Jermaine Johnson didn't necessarily totally have his presence felt, but he was getting into the backfield. Quinnen Williams in the middle, though, is where you would hope to get a little bit more of a presence, especially considering he is one of those big contracts on the Jets defense. But I expect him to be able to rebound from this game, and I don't think that this should be a massive concern. That being said, Robert Saleh, so many questions surrounding him for this upcoming season, and his backbone as a coach is on the defensive side of the ball. So just flat out, the Jets are going to need to be better on that side if they want to, be the team in the playoff, maybe even Super Bowl contender that they were hoping for. But another sort of interesting subplot coming out of this is because the defense struggled so much on the line of scrimmage, it does make you wonder if the Jets are maybe a little bit more inclined heading into next week to try and resolve this contract holdout with Hassan Reddick, who they, of course, traded for in the offseason and is yet to report for the Jets this upcoming season. So that is not a good sign, but again, ultimately, the fact that they feel like they might need a little bit more push up front could be something that gets this deal done. We will see there. But like I mentioned, the Jets really struggled to stop the run in this game, which did also in turn impact the overall pace of this game because the 49ers absolutely dominated the time of possession. San Francisco had the ball for 39 of the 60 minutes in this game, and it's due to the fact that the 49ers were able to just sort of bleed clock with a lead using that run game, but it was also due to the fact that the Jets offense was pretty mediocre last night. And it's a little bit of a catch-22 because the Jets offense also didn't get to develop any sort of rhythm on that side of the ball because they hardly had possession themselves, which sort of brings me into my overall takeaways from that Jets offense, and that it's Aaron Rodgers playing basically his first game in, over a year plus some. Week 18 in the 2022 season is the last time we actually saw Aaron Rodgers, and I thought that all things considered, he's a 41-year-old quarterback coming off of a torn Achilles. I thought he looked fine. I thought he looked sort of good. Had an interception in there. Really wasn't all that much of his fault. It was a deflected ball. Could have been placed a little bit better, maybe, but that was also a really good defensive play as well to give him a little bit of wiggle room there, considering the fact that, Lenore got his arm in on that play to Garrett Wilson and was able to pop it up to another defender. So it's not like it was a bad throw or a bad decision. I thought it was more so just a good defensive play. Rodgers' stats as a whole last night, he was 13 of 21, 167 yards, a touchdown, and that interception that I mentioned. And I thought he looked mostly comfortable. Now, there is very clearly still the arm talent, and the other part of it as well is the mental capabilities of Aaron Rodgers. Such a classic of he ended up coaxing the 49ers defense to jump off sides. He used the free play to throw the touchdown strike to Alan Lazard. Broadcast made an interesting note that it was his 18th touchdown on a free play, which is 3 times more than anybody else in NFL history. So those are the types of things you can expect Aaron Rodgers to bring to the game. It's having a, reliable quarterback from a mental perspective, which just frankly, they did not get these past couple years with what's been a little bit of a revolving door. Yes, Zach Wilson, didn't pan out for them, but he wasn't the only culprit. They tried to roll the dice on a bunch of different quarterbacks. None of them really panned out for them, and Aaron Rodgers just should be able to provide some more stability than what the Jets have seen in these past couple seasons. But ultimately, there were some physical limitations for him. The offensive line did a pretty good job protecting him, so it's not like he was under duress a ton. I would probably expect moving forward this season that as the pressure on him does start to ramp up, that we could see him maybe getting rid of the ball a little bit sooner. We saw him do that a little bit in 2022 towards the end of Tom Brady's career. That was definitely a prominent theme, that he was just trying to avoid taking those hits. And Rodgers, it's for the better of the franchise if he passes up on sort of sticking out a play and trying to make something special happen. He knows that his presence is just a massive key, and he can't afford getting hurt. He did have a little bit of a scramble out to his left at one point, and you could see it wasn't gimpy necessarily, but it did not look anywhere near as fluid as we've seen Aaron Rodgers in these, scramble rollout reps that has, been a little bit of his calling card throughout the course of his career, where he has been one of the greatest quarterbacks, at least in my lifetime, of throwing on the run. I just don't know if that's really to be expected for it to be a prominent part of his game at this point. Again, he's just trying to preserve his body and make sure that he can actually stay out there on the field. So I did think that was notable, but ultimately Rodgers was fine. Where this offense needs to evolve a little bit more, well, we stick with the passing game anyways. Only 2 wide receivers for the Jets in this game even saw targets. It was Garrett Wilson with 11, Allen Lazard with 9. Breece Hall got a number of targets. Tight end Tyler Conklin got a couple. So it's not like it was solely Lazard and Wilson. But this is a wide receiver core that doesn't have a ton of depth, in my opinion. They brought in Mike Williams, who was a non-factor in this game. Wonder if maybe they're just still trying to rehab him a little bit more, coming off of his torn ACL from last year. Does have some extensive injury history that maybe he works his way into the rotation a little bit more. Corley as well, the wide receiver that they drafted, somebody that I think could maybe emerge a little bit as a slot receiver, a little bit of a speed guy for them. Garrett Wilson can do it all. I think Allen Lazard is going to be a little bit more in that intermediate game, just being the Rodgers check down almost, just based off of the chemistry that the two of them have. That Malachi Corley could maybe emerge into a little bit of a game breaker on the perimeter, and, maybe directly underneath, and maybe be able to take the top off of the defense. That's a big ask for a rookie receiver, but I do think that they need to sort of round out their offensive attack a little bit more. And again, I thought the offensive line was pretty solid for them, but that being said, didn't get a ton of push in the run game. Breece Hall, who is one of the best running backs in the league, he was good. Not great. 3.4 yards per carry. You would like to see more from that. Now, that's not, again, all on his fault. There were a couple short yardage situations late in this game. The 2-point conversion and the 3rd and short that occurred on the Jets, one of the Jets' final drives where it was 3rd and inches. Both times they tried to just run Breece Hall up the middle, got no push on the line, and Breece Hall isn't exactly a powerful running back that is going to sort of run through defenders. He's more of a speed and acceleration running back and can be a proponent in the passing game. But I was a little concerned about that. That being said, I'm a big fan of Braylon Allen, who didn't get much playing time last night, but the Jets running back that they drafted in the 4th round out of Wisconsin looks like a little bit of a physical specimen, one of the youngest players in the NFL. I think they mentioned on the broadcast last night that he is the youngest player in the NFL, but 6'1", 235 pounds. I really like the size that he could bring for the Jets, and I wonder if he starts to take on a bigger role for himself as well as the season moves on. But as for that offensive line, it's 3 new starters this season. I think it's going to take them a little bit of time to build up that chemistry and cohesion that they can better operate. But again, they did a good job of protecting Aaron Rodgers. You just want a little bit more push in the run game, but you're also looking at a couple guys as well coming from the Ravens last season in Morgan Moses and John Simpson, that they know what it takes to be sufficient as a run blocking team, considering they both were starters for the number 1 rush offense in the league last year. So I think that the offensive line is going to continue to get better. If you're a believer in the Jets, then I wouldn't be abandoning ship at this point. That being said, I do think there are some real limitations. The passing game, I don't know. Like I said, I like the idea of Corley maybe stepping into a bigger role, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. And I don't know. Again, only 2 wide receivers even getting targets. It's just not really a great sign to me in terms of the overall functionality. Now, that's also a bit of a result of it just being week 1 and Rodgers not getting a ton of game reps with any of these other wide receivers. So We'll see there. But Robert Saleh definitely has the pressure building on him a little bit more. You're facing Kyle Shanahan, maybe the best offensive mind in football, that has probably been preparing for this game for over a month. So I'll give him a little bit of leeway. But ultimately, the Jets, they fully understand the level of pressure that's surrounding them. And I think that Aaron Rodgers especially is somebody who is going to, not get in his head too much and panic based off of just a week 1 loss. It's a long season, so we'll have to see ultimately how this pans out for them. But the Jets now have a short week because they play this upcoming week on Thursday Night Football. Double checking here, but it is no, I'm wrong. It's that they have a Thursday Night Football game coming up in week 3 against the Patriots. This week on the road at Tennessee against a weaker team. I think we see the offense take some steps forward. Final notes here on the 49ers as well. Like I mentioned, it was just kind of business as usual for them, even with all of the noise that occurred for them during the offseason. They just continued to be a machine. No Christian McCaffrey, no problem. The one thing is that Brandon Ayuk did look a little, out of sorts. Now that's something that I easily think they're going to be able to overcome as the 49ers move on here, that he just needs to, after his holdout this offseason, get a little bit back acclimated to this 49ers roster. Only 2 catches in this game on 5 targets, ended up dropping a touchdown pass. So he knows that he's going to need to be better, and I have no worries that he's going to be able to. And then the last note I have is that Devondre Campbell, looking like a pretty good pickup for the 49ers, former All-Pro with Green Bay, and the 49ers kind of got him for nothing. It's not going to be the flashiest signing of the offseason by any means, but I think it's a great replacement in the meantime while Dre Greenlaw is recovering from his torn Achilles injury, and Campbell can provide depth and a little bit of a different look for the 49ers moving forward this season as well. So I thought that he looked pretty good in this game. But let me know what your takeaways were in the comment section, as I want to sort of take a step back and look more so at some of the other games from the weekend that we didn't get to cover yesterday. We're going to be diving into the play of Caleb Williams and the wild game that was the Chicago Bears versus the Tennessee Titans, and talk about what it means for the outlook for the Bears moving forward with Caleb Williams struggling and the defense making plays and also benefiting a little bit from a lackluster Tennessee offense. So we will be diving into that, but first we're going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.